The great city of Indianapolis this week for the NFL Combine, and instead I'm back here in the studio talking to some old friends about some fresh issues, and certainly with the Ravens, if I were out in Indianapolis right now, I'd be talking about all of the free agency needs, issues, situations, and signings, and I know Cliff Brown is on all of that from here in Maryland as well. We welcome one of our defending champs back from Comcast Sports Mid-Atlantic. He is Clifton Brown, covering all things Ravens, and this is a time over the next 6 or 7 weeks, Cliff, and I know you and I have talked about it, periodically. This is the most important 6 or 7 weeks for the next 5 years for the Ravens, given who's going to be running the team, calling the shots, coaching the players, and which players they're going to get here over the next 6 or 7 weeks. Ozzie needs to win and win big here over the next 2 months.
He does, no question. I mean, the Ravens need a strong draft. As usual, I don't think they're going to make a lot of chairs move in free agency as far as being one of the bolder teams out there just signing the big name guys. But they definitely need to pick up some players, whether it's through free agency or the draft, that help them for next season. They are just, as the team stands now, in my opinion, not good enough. Not good enough to be a Super Bowl contender, maybe not good enough to be a playoff team. So they've got holes to fill. They've got a lot of competition in the AFC. We always know, Patriots aren't going anywhere. The Steelers aren't going anywhere. So, yeah, they've got to have a good offseason if they're going to have a good season in 2017.
Brandon Williams and Rick Wagner obviously will be the big story here this week. How much money they're going to get. We keep hearing that number thrown around, $1 billion in cap space in the NFL here over the next couple of weeks for teams to go spend money either wisely or foolishly. Certainly for the Ravens, that 2013 draft with the Elam situation, Arthur Brown, those guys never really getting to the field. These are the two guys from that draft, along with Kyle Juszczyk and John Simon, who's made his own money down there in Houston. These are the two remnants of that draft that was such a disaster draft after the Super Bowl. But these guys have been, shining NFL starting players. Now it's their chance to get paid. I don't know that the Ravens are going to be in the market to give a right tackle $9-10 million. I don't think the Ravens are going to be in the market to give Brandon Williams maybe the $13 or $14 million he might see in free agency.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Nestor. I mean, I think that Wagner is the easier guy to replace, and I think that Wagner is the least expensive of the two. I do believe the Ravens want to re-sign Brandon Williams more badly than they want to re-sign Wagner. I think that the Ravens will try hard to re-sign Brandon Williams, harder than they've tried to re-sign some other free agents who have left, in recent years. But I still don't know if that's going to be good enough. Brandon Williams, he definitely is, I think, is going to take the best offer. If it comes from Baltimore, I think he'll stay. If it comes from somewhere else, I think he'll go. So, yeah, my feeling is they're going to lose both of them. I think there's a possibility they could re-sign either, but my gut tells me they'll probably end up losing both, not because they don't want them back, but because they're going to be too expensive.
Well, and then there's what they're going to be doing to replace Steve Smith and Zach Orr and figuring out the Jimmy Smith situation, figuring out their cap situation with Ladarius Webb, with Elvis Dumervil. Boy, I mean, situation by situation. Cliff, break it down for me. What do you think's going to happen here? I mean, I agree with you. I don't think Brandon Williams and Rick Wagner are staying here because I think they're going to get some outrageous money elsewhere. And I think Brandon Williams' heart's kind of here. I mean, having spent some time with him at the Super Bowl, having seen, I follow him on Facebook. I do think he loves it here, and I do think all things being equal, he would stay here. But I don't think things are going to be equal here in the next couple of weeks, just given where the Ravens' cap situation. I mean, Mike Wallace, Dennis Pitta. I mean, there's just so many situations, and I don't think. I think the fans are going to be shocked at how this thing plays out because this could be a real breakdown for the team. I mean, a lot of these guys might be gone in the end.
Yeah, there may be some panic, after free agency is over before the draft in that, the Ravens are going to lose some players, and obviously before the draft starts, you're not going to fully know who they're going to replace these guys with. So, yeah, I mean, if Brandon Williams goes, I do think that, with Michael Pierce and Timmy Jernigan getting left behind, that the Ravens could still have a good defensive line and lose Brandon Williams. Also, this draft I'm told by the experts, is very deep at corner, safety, and wide receiver. And those are three areas where the Ravens need help. So, it's imperative that the Ravens have a good draft, but they have the ammunition. Unlike some years, I'm told that you could find a quality corner in this draft as late as round 3. So I do expect the Ravens to draft at least one corner. I mean, if I'm a Ravens fan, I'd really like to see him draft a couple of corners. Jimmy Smith, we know his injury situation. Until he proves he can play a full 16-game season here since that foot injury, even if he plays well, you've got to have more depth at the corner position. So at least the draft is good at corner, at least it's good at safety, at least it's good at wide receiver. I think the Ravens will draft at least one player at those three positions, and then they may also add a wide receiver in free agency. I kind of think Mike Wallace is a guy who could be back. I know he's one of those guys who may not be back, and I think between Dennis Pitta and Ben Watson, one of them will stay. I don't think they're both going to go, but definitely, I think between Williams, Wagner, there'll be some players who will be leaving, and the Ravens are going to be a different team next year. They are going to have a different look. They need to get faster and they need to get younger, so they have to hope that they can accomplish those things and they ultimately get better.
Cliff, I don't know that we've talked since the Bisciotti press conference. The pitchfork thing, and I'm going to keep referring to that because that's the owner talking about it, not from his own mind, but from the mind of the fans and where you are. 3 out of 4 years team hasn't made the playoffs. I look at these next 8 weeks, and I'm not one of those guys that's always on the verge of outrage and whatever, but I really do think that these decisions over the next 8 weeks, if they go 6-10 next year, I think we're looking at some sort of tectonic plate shift for the franchise in leadership and decision making and coaching all the way along. I don't think they can afford to not win 10 games next year.
Yeah, I mean, Nestor, I wouldn't go that far. I would say that, sure, if they go 6-10, John Harbaugh's gone. I don't know if Steve Bisciotti is ever going to fire Ozzie Newsome. And I'm not even sure a 6-10 season would do it. It's just my opinion. I just think that his faith in Ozzie and his belief, he did mention in that press conference too, it didn't get as much attention. He made reference to something like he doesn't believe Ozzie's, lost his fastball, or that he still has confidence in Ozzie. Even when draft picks don't pan out, I don't think Steve Bisciotti loses faith in Ozzie Newsome. I think that, 6-10 season would show that there needs to be a change probably as a head coach, particularly since John Harbaugh made, I think, a risky choice in retaining Marty Morningwig. Now, if the Ravens go to the playoffs next season, obviously there's not going to be a coaching change. If they don't make the playoffs, I still think there's some gray area. If, they were to go 9-7 and barely miss the playoffs and win 4 out of the last 5, would he get rid of John Harbaugh? I'm not so sure, because I do believe that Steve Bisciotti thinks John Harbaugh still is a good coach. He thinks he's a better coach than most of the coaches in the NFL, and I happen to agree with him. And if you make that change, there's no guarantee you'll bring in a better coach who will get better results. So it is a crucial kind of make-or-break year in that, I know that a losing season won't be good enough, and maybe a non-playoff season won't be good enough. But, I just think that John Harbaugh still has a chance to coach here for a lot longer if the Ravens have a bounce-back season. And of those two gentlemen between Harbaugh and Newsome, it's my belief that Ozzie's chair is still pretty firm.
2015 draft, you go back to the Perryman draft. Boy, that thing has really not netted anything on the field, right? Perryman, Williams, Davis, Smith, Buck Allen, Trey Walker, sadly, Nick Boyle, Robert Myers, and Darren Waller. Somewhere in there, who are amongst those players that are going to contribute on the field from September through December of this year? Davis and Smith are guys that, and Williams are all guys that have had trouble getting on the field at any point and making any impact.
Yeah, I'm told that Max Williams, knee injury is pretty severe, reconstructive type thing. So, he's very young, and he may end up being a decent player at some point if he recovers fully. But to say he's going to be a contributor next year, I don't know. I mean, Darren Waller, I wouldn't think so, actually, I should say. Darren Waller has a lot of talent, but he's raw and made a position switch. So, yeah, is he going to be a tight end who catches, 40 or more balls next season? I don't think so. So, yeah, the Ravens, that's another reason why I think either Pitta or Wallace will be back, or Watson, I should say, Ben Watson should be back, because I think that they need an experienced tight end. Crockett Gilmore hasn't been able to stay healthy either. So even though they have a lot of bodies at tight end, they also have a lot of question marks. So between Watson and Pitta, I think that just having a reliable tight end, if they're healthy, which Pitta is, and you hope that Watson will get healthy, one of those two, we know how much the Ravens like to use tight ends and how much Joe Flacco likes to throw the tight ends, and either Watson or Pitt, I think, will be on the roster. But, yeah, the Ravens need to have a better draft than they've had in recent years. I mean, I liked last year's draft. They did get players who helped them win. I think Tavon Young was an excellent pick. Ronnie Stanley, I think he's going to be the left tackle for the next 10 years and play well. But they need impact players, and that, playmakers, particularly on offense and defense, that's where the Ravens have lacked in the draft in recent years. Guys who, change the way a game is flowing. The Antonio Browns, the Le'Veon Bell, the Rob Gronkowski's. They have to stop players like that. They haven't been able to draft players like that lately.
He is Cliff Brown. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Clifton Brown CSN. He covers the Ravens and has been doing so for a number of years now, and getting up on this draft and trying to figure out which direction they're going to go in early and first pick. Everything I hear about this draft is defensive loaded, and also that there's not some sort of consensus table fall off after 6 or 8 players. There's a grand feeling here. There are 20 pretty good football players in this draft, and who will fall down the chart to the Ravens. I'm with you on the pass rush. It feels to me like if you don't get a pass rusher or a cornerback in a draft, you're not going to find those players in free agency. You have to draft corners and pass rushers on draft day. That's not something that's going to fall to you from another organization.
Yeah, you do. And the Ravens need pass rushers. I mean, I think that Elvis Dumervil is not going to come back. I think that he will be a cap casualty. So if Dumerville's not here, we know Terrell Suggs going into his 14th season. You can't count on him being a double-digit sack guy anymore. Darius Smith did not step up in his second year, was a disappointment as a sack guy. And Matt Juden showed potential certainly, but Kyle Fusi, guy who was hurt. They definitely have a lot of question marks as far as their young pass rushers. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them draft another one. But the pass rush has to come from somewhere. I mean, the pass rush makes such a difference in the way you can play defense. If you can get pressure on the quarterback week after week, rushing just 4 guys, then your entire defense looks better. And that's something the Ravens had in 2014 when Suggs and Dumerville both had great years. They could get pressure on the quarterback before, and, they came very close to getting to the AFC Championship, and that was a big reason why. Since then, they haven't had that type of pass rush. Again, I don't think Dumerville's coming back. And if they don't get pass rushers or have some of their younger pass rushers develop, then I think even if they get help at the corner and safety position, they still may not be good enough defensively to get to the top of the AFC.
Well, look, we could beat up these drafts over the last 3 or 4 years, and specifically 13 and 15. But last year, the team had the same issues. I mean, they weren't very good. They were coming off the Flacco injury. Ozzie did a pretty good job last year when you look at how many draft picks got onto the field and how they fared in free agency. And we always say you're not going to build your franchise through free agency. But, you go back to the championship and you talk about the additions of the Matt Burks. You talk about last year the addition of a Weddle and a Wallace and how much that added. And I saw, Nick Mangold wound up on the street earlier this week. I mean, that seems like the type of thing the Ravens would do at the center position to bring in some sort of 30-something veteran guy trying to get 2 or 3 good years out of him. Same thing they've tried to do with Weddle and with Wallace. Last year was a better offseason for Ozzie Newsome, I think, than he had after those Super Bowl runs.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Weddle and Wallace were both key additions. I agree with you that Mangold's the type of player who fits the Ravens' MO as far as the type of free agent they pick up. Someone who's experienced, someone who obviously would fit in well in the locker room. They do want to get bigger at center. I mean, Jeremy Zuda is just an undersized center, and sometimes he's simply overpowered by defensive tackle who are simply stronger than him. So yeah, the Ravens, you stick a guy like Mangold in the middle next to two young guys like Stanley and Lewis, who was also an excellent draft pick from last year. Yeah, to me, the offensive line, and then having Yonda too, you can see them still being able to have a decent offensive line next season with just one or two moves at the most. But I think the bigger issue is the playmakers, both offensively and defensively. Guys who can create turnovers, guys who can create big plays. That's what the Ravens lack. They just don't put fear in the opposition, particularly offensively, even though they have a quarterback in Joe Flacco who can throw it deep. He doesn't have the type of weapons that, really translate into make explosive plays. And as long as they're a methodical offensive team that doesn't generate a lot of big plays, I think it's going to be very hard for them, to do something special.
Well, Cliff, you still buying what they're selling on Rashad Perryman? Or have you seen anything that's made you think that kid's going to catch 65 balls next year and, catch 8 touchdowns and be on the field 16? I haven't. I'm just wondering if you feel something I don't feel about him at this point.
Well, I'm glad he made it through the season healthy. That was number one. So I do feel better that, okay, he may not be a guy who has a chronic knee thing. He may be able to stay on the field. You got to love his speed. I mean, everybody sees that. His size, everybody sees that. He's just a very raw route runner. And, you're just not going to fool guys with speed at this level if you're tipping off where you're going and you have no deception at all. So he's going to have to work. I mean, I think he wants to be good. I think that his heart is in it. But
being around Steve Smith probably wasn't a bad thing for him the last couple of years either, who runs routes like that. Same thing with Wallace. Yeah.
Absolutely. But, yeah, am I totally convinced that Rashard Perriman is going to be a 60-ball, a more guy, 1,000-yard receiver? No. But I think it could happen. I mean, essentially last year was his rookie year. So,
fair enough.
He came into the league raw. Then he missed his rookie season. So, yeah, I'll have a much better idea at the end of next year. But actually, to be honest, I feel a little bit better about him now than I did going in this year because, frankly, I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to stay healthy, and at least he was able to do that.
Dixon's going to be the guy in the end, right? I mean, Terrence West, okay, fair enough, but I would think a healthy version of Kenneth Dixon. That's one thing that Ozzy's going to Indianapolis to the Combine this week thinking, well, I think we have a running back. I'm pretty sure we have a running back.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Dixon's a guy out of the group who can do special things. I like what Terrence West did last year. At worst, he could be a very good backup. But I don't think he has Dixon's explosiveness. Dixon can catch passes out of the backfield. He's just an all-around player. So I like Dixon. I think he's going to be the starting running back next year. And, again, if he can stay healthy and show that he's the type of guy who can handle getting 20 touches every week and take the pounding that comes with it, yeah, maybe even if the Ravens don't get any help at that position, they could be okay. But, yeah, they have to get between the wide receiver position, the tight end position, or whether it's a home run or running back, to me, they've got to get a player who can make explosive plays for them.
This guy covers all things Ravens for Comcast Sportsnet, where I turn most nights this time of the year, certainly with the Caps and the Wizards doing well. Now, look, man, I know you cover the NFL, but I know you got the NBA Jones about you. This Wizards thing's kind of fascinating now, isn't it? This little run they've been on. I don't think anyone saw this coming back in November.
No, it didn't look like it, but I think really Bradley Beal has really stepped up this year, taking his game to another level. I mean, Wall's a terrific player, and it's a good sign that their best player in Wall continues to get better. But everybody knew what kind of talent he has. Beal, I think, has become a much better all-around player, not just a scorer, but a guy who can make plays for others. So that backcourt, having one of the best backcourts in the NBA, and they dominate the ball for them, they're a hard team to defend. And then I think Scott Brooks is an excellent coach. He was that way in Oklahoma City. And
that much is clear, right? I mean, that nowhere else you would look and you'd say, dude, that guy can coach. I mean, I don't know what the secret sauce is for any of those guys in the NBA, and Phil Jackson doing his his Buddhist whisperings and whatnot. But the Scotty Brooks thing. Some guys have it and some guys don't, and clearly he's taking a group of talent here and he's getting the most out of them right now, that's what he's charged with doing, right?
It is, and they just need another piece or two to really be that, get to that level where they have a shot to win a title. And because the NBA is no longer, a big man league where you can win championships with perimeter players, I think that improves the Wizards' chances. I mean, they already have two top perimeter players in Wall and Beal. If they could just get another one or two, in the front court, then you're really talking. And those two guys are young. So, yeah, there's a lot to be excited about with the Wizards moving forward. I think the next 3 or 4 years with them could be really interesting.
That being said, whatever you have in your wallet right now, you put it on Golden State and Cleveland in the finals, right?
I know, Nestor, and that's one thing. I mean, you see a lot of great. I think the last 2 years, the NBA playoffs have been terrific.
They have
a lot of drama, a lot of great players play, but when it was all said and done, the two teams in the finals were the Warriors and the Cavs. And I think that's what's going to happen this year. I mean, there'll be some twists and turns along the way. One, maybe both of those teams at some point may be on the ropes before they get to the finals. But if you ask me, who am I going to be watching in June, playing for the championships, I just have a hard time believing it's not going to be the Warriors versus the Cavaliers.
Cliff, always enjoy your company. Always enjoy having you on the program. We're going to send everybody out to Clifton Brown CSN to follow you out on Twitter on your journey as well. We'll check in again soon. Great having you on.
Always a pleasure, Nestor. Take care. Best to you and your wife.
Thank you so much. Cliff Brown, good man at Comcast Sportsnet, covered all things Ravens. We were going to be at the Combine this week. I called an audible with jet lag and all the issues we had and just said, you know what? I'm going to stay home this week, going to do the show from the studio, going to spend some time with Kitty and with my wife, and we're going to get it right. So Luke and I will be monitoring all things Orioles spring training. I'm obviously watching the Caps, the Terps, the Wizards this week, and keeping an eye on the Underwear Olympics out in Indianapolis as well. I figure I'll drink less beer and eat less cocktail sauce this way, although I can get over to Costas and get some cocktail sauce if I need some as well. I am home. It's good to be home. What is Judy Garland? There's no place like home. You can find me out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault anywhere you are in the world. I was listening all the way from Auckland, New Zealand a couple of days ago and checking out WNST.net. How do you think I get my news? You can also subscribe to our text service, which is the best way to stay up on any breaking news. I got the Matt Elam news the minute I landed on Sunday morning. That's all brought to you, of course, by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. And Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home, getting you ready for the weekend. And we got a Big Ten tournament next weekend. We're going to have bracketology next week. Good stuff happening around here, as well as some cactus and spring training baseball. I'm going to be seeing some cactus ball out in Arizona later on in the month. The NFL owners meetings are out there. We'll be there for that. We're going to be joined by head coach Barry Trotz here in Baltimore on March the 20th. We're going to do a Caps night, a little Rock the Red celebration in the hopes of the Caps winning a cup. And, of course, they made a big deal on Monday night to bring in a new defense. We're going to talk to Ed Frankovic about that. So plenty of things happening around here. I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and of course streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.